Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am Marc Givler. Got Tony Gerdeman with me here today for another run as we have some staff. I know Tom's finally getting back from Hawaii, and Kevin Noon's getting back from North Carolina here. And so Tony and I are kind of a tag team partners this week on a lot of this content. So, huge visit weekend for Ohio State over the weekend. Their second one of the month. This one was a little bigger than last one. And before we get too far ahead of ourselves, next one might be a little bigger than this one was. So we're building towards quite a month of June here, but this June 9th weekend, let's dive right into this huge weekend so far. Jalen McLean has already committed coming out of the weekend, so they've landed one commitment. Which if you were on BuckeyeHuddle.com, you had a pretty good idea that was coming. I think there's going to be a lot more coming out of this weekend, and whether or not that's in the next couple of days or the next couple of weeks, I think is kind of irrelevant, but that's, people like to know exactly when. I think it's going to take a little bit, but just digging through the visitor list from the weekend and talking to guys, talking to other sources around the program and around the country really about, some of these guys. This has the feel of just a really positive weekend where we look back on this in 6 months and say, man, what a weekend that was. They got 4 or 5 guys coming out of this. I mean, Tony, you've kind of seen what's out there as well. I mean, are you feeling the vibes here coming out of the weekend?
Yeah, because when you've got a weekend with visits from commits and they're boistering and everybody else, but also even a guy like Jeremiah Smith, who there are rumors and concerns about, like, I think this helps with him as well. And you see him recruiting for Ohio State throughout this as well. And so I think that strengthens that bond for him. But yeah, I think when you bring all of these different guys together, and there is some momentum right now, but as you always say, what happens after the high? The high of the visit comes down, and then because this guy's at Ohio State this weekend, he's at LSU next weekend, he's at USC the next weekend. There's a lot of ups and downs, and that's why it's the relationships will always be key, even in this NIL world. Yeah, I like where the momentum is going right now.
Yeah, let's get right into the receivers. Look, they've got 2 committed right now as we record this. Jeremiah Smith, Mylan Graham, maybe the 2 best receivers in the country. They are for my money, and certainly Jeremiah Smith is number 1. But Jeremiah McClellan on campus, St. Louis product, a guy we've kind of had in the mock class for a while now. I think that one went well enough to kind of seal this deal up here. We'll see. It's looking like a summer decision, so I think we'll know something in the next month or so. Elijah Moore was in, 4-star prospect out of Maryland, was in last week. I continue to like where they are with that one. That would put them to 4 if they can get both of those guys, and I'm told there's absolutely room for both. So it's not a question of someone having to beat the other one to the punch. That they'll take both whenever they're ready. Tony, we've heard Brian Hartline go on and on for years about, well, I'd like to take just 3 every year. Well, that just is, it's not realistic, is it?
No, especially you see what happened in the 2022 class where they lost 2 of the 4 to the portal. And if you're going to lose half of them to the portal, you're going to have to take more than just 3. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I think they've got a good 4 as things are shaping up now. If you want to throw Jeremiah McClellan in, who talking with Mylan Graham, who is already committed, the 5-star commit, he was talking about Jeremiah McClellan being the slot receiver of the class. And of course, Elijah Moore, 6'4", 200 odd pounds, 195 pounds or so, as an outside guy that they could add to the class. I think it'll be interesting to watch the recruiting rankings of Elijah Moore, because he's a 3-star by some people. And once the Ohio State attention gets on them, the Brian Hartline attention gets on them, then you tend to see the rise in the rankings. But I like the makeup if it's those 4, because Brian Hartline told Milan Graham to start focusing on playing Z, but also don't forget that, also watch Emeka Ibuka and watch his game as a guy who started out as Z and then can play in the slot and can do, move to Z this past year and then had to go back into the slot because of Jackson Smith and Jigba. So you've got three outside guys and say an inside guy with Jeremiah McClellan if you were to commit, but then also Milan Graham who could do either. And as you know, Jeremiah Smith, whatever you need him to do, he could do. Just throw him the darn ball.
Yeah, it'd be they really would complement each other really well. It'd be another sensational class from Brian Hartline. But yeah, we are liking where things are trending for both of those guys. And again, it's not a either or situation. There's room for both. The other big position of emphasis was defensive line over this past weekend. You had Darian Mayo, a big kind of strong side end prospect out of Maryland, Jaden Jackson, IMG Academy defensive tackle, Indiana native, Marquise Lightfoot, edge prospect out of Chicago, were some of the big names on campus there. Marquise Lightfoot, I think, has been an interesting one. I've kind of pounded the table on our site that, like, look, guys, I know everyone's kind of freaking out about D-line recruiting and who's going to be the defensive ends. They can get this kid. I feel great about Ohio State's chances coming out of the weekend. I think this is a guy that's trending very much in their direction right now. He just released his top 6. Ohio State's, of course, in it. But this just feels like a Larry Johnson special to me.
Well, and being a Midwest guy, and you look at some of the top schools, and Ohio State is that Midwest special in there, and he's a long guy who I think still has the frame to add more, and obviously he will. But I know a lot of Buckeye fans are still a little broken from the way things ended last year, but there is still another year, and there's always going to be recruiting going on, and Larry Johnson's not going to strike out every single year. I mean, even you look at last year, they still add Joshua Mickens in this class as a defensive end in the 2023 class, and he was committed to LSU at one point. So like these guys that they will get are still very, very talented. And I know people are like, but they're not Chase Young and they're not Joey Bosa. Nobody is. Like, you can't expect those guys. You got to go and find the next Sam Hubbard, the next Tyquan Lewis, those guys. And, this could be one of them, Marquise Lightfoot.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his game. He's kind of a weak side end, kind of a pure pass rusher at this point. Going to get bigger. But he's just always mentioned Larry Johnson to me ever since we started talking, and just how important Larry Johnson's been in his recruiting process, what he thinks of Larry Johnson. And then you put the geography together there. It's, quick, very easy to get from Chicago to Columbus. And you put in a depth chart that's pretty favorable if you're a 2024 defensive lineman, especially if you're a defensive end. So I love the Buckeyes to eventually land Marquise Lightfoot. And I think that'll be another guy we look back on again in 6 months. But boy, that really went well for them with this guy. And so we'll see. He's got a couple more visits coming up and probably looking at a July decision. Darian Mayo is kind of the interesting one. What's that?
I was going to ask you about Edric Houston and how that defensive end situation might shake itself out. And that wouldn't be a bad 1-2 punch, would it?
That would be an amazing 1-2 punch. It would be an ideal 1-2 punch because Edric is more of your classic strong side end but he can rush the passer, but he does it from a bigger bodied kind of guy than Lightfoot is. I made a comment recently. I thought Edric Houston might be the best player in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I think him and Jeremiah Smith would be my 1 and 2. And I said that, a month or two ago before it really got heated up with Ohio State with Houston. And now the crystal balls are coming in, and he'll be on campus this coming weekend. He'll be on campus for his official visit. Ohio State's been quietly optimistic there for a while. We'll see what happens. I've liked what I've heard ever since talking to him a few weeks ago, and down there in Atlanta, we were at his spring game. So I got pretty good vibes out of that, but knew it'd be a tough battle here. But it sounds like Ohio State's got this thing in a good spot coming into the visit. And yes, that would be a phenomenal 1-2 punch. Another guy, again, Darian Mayo out of Maryland, he's like a 6'6", 250. He's a big, strong side end prospect. He's another guy that's been a priority, along with Dylan Stewart as another guy who's coming in here, I believe, next week. So they're in on a lot of defensive linemen right now, a lot of defensive ends. This isn't last year where it's, oh, we got our top 2.5 guys, and if we strike out, So they've broadened the search a little bit. Mayo, I think, is going to be a Michigan Ohio State battle right now. I know Ohio State's felt pretty good about that one, but Michigan obviously is confident too. So that's going to be a bit of a tighter battle than I think what Marquise Lightfoot is right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. The one thing I'll say real quick here about Larry Johnson is whenever people have gotten on him for having a down class, he has bounced back with a vengeance. A few years ago, people were down on him for I think it was the 2020 class, how that didn't really produce. It was like Darian Henry and Jacoby Cowan, and it just didn't kind of live up to the billing. And then he goes out and gets, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Michael Hall, and it's just like, so I think that's going to happen again. Let's put it that way. I'll just say this. I think we're going to look back and be like, yep, he rebounded quite well. And then the last guy here we can talk about from the weekend, Jaden Jackson, a 4-star defensive tackle from IMG Academy, Indiana native, very close with Larry Johnson, been recruited by him for a very long time. Tony, just thoughts on Jaden Jackson and just, what their need for defensive tackle in general.
Yeah, a big guy, like 6'2", 300, but is one of those space eaters that Larry Johnson, when he recruits defensive tackles, he also wants quickness. So I'm always interested in the guys that he chooses because he wants some pass rush out of these guys. And you've seen that with Tyleek Williams, who came in at like 330 pounds, could rush the passer. Caden McDonald, another 330-pound guy who can rush the passer. This guy is smaller than that, but I would assume he can do the same. And there's a level of size and quickness, the combination that Larry Johnson likes.
Yep, that's another one I've got in the class. So if you're keeping score at home, they've got like 4 or 5 possible commitments coming out this weekend. So keep it locked in with BuckeyeHuddle.com. I just wanted to give you guys a quick recap, quick update. We appreciate it. BuckeyeHuddle.com for all your updates. YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, and we will see you next time.